Hi, welcome to the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. In today's video, as it's 808 day, we're going to be looking at some of the techniques I use when mixing 808 kicks in the MPC standalone. There's a ton of ways to do this, no definitive way. If you want to check out some other engineers, Jason Joshua, Mike Dean, Dave Pensado, and a whole bunch of other YouTubers, like I said, loads of different techniques. Let's jump in. So I've banged up a quick 808 beat using 808 kick, snare, hat, and then a layered kick over the top. The 808 kick is sampled straight off an original 808 onto tape, so there might be a little bit of tape saturation and compression on it, but it's pretty clean, it's pretty neutral. Just be aware that if you're using 808 kicks off sample packs, they've quite often been EQ'd, compressed, saturated, etc. So just be aware of that if you're using 808s off sample packs. In this method, and this is a method I've been using since the 80s, I tend to saturate the 808 kick first, then I will EQ the kick, and then I will think about ways of perhaps making room in the frequencies of the 808 kick for other instruments, other kick drums, other bass sounds, etc. Generally, I keep my 808 kicks in mono. There are no rules in audio, as I'm sure you know, but as a rule, you tend to keep low frequencies in mono. But there has been a craze lately of adding side information to 808 kicks. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that at all. If I was to do that, I would probably add side information just to the mid-range, because obviously you have a bit of mid-range on an 808 kick, especially once you've added saturation. Another way of doing it would be to add some reverb and pan the reverb, just so you've got a bit of side information. But again, I would probably just stick to the mid-range. I wouldn't really want to push low-end frequencies, the fundamental of the kick, 60 hertz, 50 hertz, that kind of area, into the sides. It's not the best idea, but like I said, there are absolutely no rules, so there's no reason why you shouldn't do that. So on the MPC, we're a bit limited when it comes to saturation plugins. Obviously on the DAW there's millions to choose from. I tend to use the Air Tube drive. The reason I do is it's very, very simple. I like the sound that it imprints, and it gets the job done, basically. And what I've done here, as you can hear, turn it off, I've added a ton of drive and a ton of saturation, but what I've done is I've pushed the headroom right up, and what that's done is it's made it not sound too squashed, and it actually creates a kind of warm saturation rather than a crushed saturation. If I just show you what happens if I turn this down. So with the headroom right up at 0 dB, I'm not squashing it, and I'm not creating too much distortion, and I've still got that kind of nice pop, that nice mid-range click. And then I've compensated with the output. So then what I've done is I've gone into some EQ. I've used the PEQ4 band. Now the reason why I've done that, the reason why I've used this particular EQ is I want to emulate. I always used to use a Pultec EQ in the 80s in the studio that I worked in, because I was lucky enough to have an actual Pultec EQ. Now it's an old trick, there's loads about it on YouTube and in books, manuals, etc. I certainly didn't invent it. It's actually called the Pultec Trick. And what you do, what the aim of it is to do, is to really push the low end, the fundamental of the kick, which is around about 60 hertz on this 808. And then what you do is you scoop out some of the mud from around about 110 hertz upwards, and what that does is it obviously gives you a lot of bottom end, but it doesn't overwhelm the mix, because with a lot of bottom end, a lot of low frequencies, you're just going to muddy up everything in the low end. So what you're doing is you've created a hump and then you've created a dip, if that makes sense. But what it also does is it tightens up the low end, and the low end is not too flappy and boomy, but it still really sounds big and wholesome and lots of girth to it. So you can see here, so what I've done is I've boosted at 58 hertz, quite a wide Q, because I want quite a hump there, and I've pushed it quite hard without with. Then I have gone for about 134, and again quite a wide Q, and I've scooped quite a lot out. So by doing that, that's what I've done, where I've created the boom, the hump, and then I've scooped out and then tightened up the low end. So that's kind of the Pultec Trick. Obviously this isn't a Pultec, but this is probably as close as you can get really with a Pultec on the MPC. And you know, looking at the numbers and listening to how it sounds is kind of doing a similar thing. It's not exactly like my Pultec, obviously, but and then what I've done is I've just added a bit of mid-range, which is the kind of click, and also what I've done is I've brought out the sound of the saturation as well. And then finally, I'm using Mother Ducker. So the reason why I'm using Mother Ducker is, as I explained, I go saturation, then EQ, and then I want to think about kind of ducking the 808 a little bit out of the way of the layered kick, which I've done. So with the layer kick, as you can hear, it's pretty puny, but the point is the layer kick is creating some transient and some punch. So with the layer kick, all I've really done is I've rolled off the bottom end from about 80 Hertz. So I've got room for the 808 kick then. And then with the EQ, I've just pushed it a little bit at 96, which gives it a little bit of beef. And I've also pushed the mid-range as well, which is kind of where the click is on that kick drum. And then I've used the Mother Ducker input, and I've set that to the Mother Ducker input bus 1. And then I've got the Mother Ducker on the 808 kick. So what you want to do is you don't really want to do too much work, because I don't want the 808 to really completely duck out of the way. On this particular beat, I want it to be quite subtle. It's totally a taste thing, it's totally your choice, but in this particular situation, I've ducked it a little bit. It's quite a low ratio, quite a fast attack, and quite a fast release. I've taken auto off because I want to have control over how it releases. And the threshold, as you can see, I mean, it's on 0, and you'll see that it's doing very, very little. But what it's doing is it is just ducking the 808 out of the way a little bit. So then what I've done is I've just added a little bit of bus compression on the main outputs. Very, very small amount, very low ratio, slow attack to let everything through. I don't want to crush it, and a quick release. Pretty standard bus compression setup. It's doing maybe 1 decibel of compression, but what it's doing is it's just bringing everything together. It's just gluing everything. And then I've added the MPC 60 on the end. If you watch my videos, you'll know that I use the MPC 60 a lot. And I've said it a million times, I don't care whether it emulates the MPC 60, but what I do like is I like the bottom end that it adds. So just to kind of beef it up, really. So let's have a listen to the beat afterwards, and then I've actually got it set up on here. I bounced the entire beat without any effects on it at all, and I've matched the levels, and you'll see when I show you in a second how the levels are actually matched. They're exactly the same, they're coming out exactly the same, but what you've done with the saturation on the 808 kick is you've increased the perceived loudness, so it appears to be louder, and it's going to pop through on your phone, on your car, in a big club, on earbuds, on really bad mono Bluetooth speakers, and that's the point of it. The point is to increase the perceived loudness, but the actual loudness, if you look at the readings, is exactly the same as the original one before I put any effects on it at all. So if we just listen to let's listen to the version without anything on it at all. So you can hear it still sounds okay, but there's not that kind of boo sound that you get with the 808, which is what people are kind of after. And it's not really cutting through as well. I mean, really, it just sort of sounds like a nice rounded sort of kick low end, but there's no real proper girth to it. So I won't talk, I will just play the original version, and then I will play the actual beat. So you can hear I've gone pretty subtle there. You know, I've not really smashed the 808, but that's just how I like to mix. It's a total taste thing. So if I go into the main outputs, just tap that to zero that. If you, yeah, that's set up okay. So if you watch the readout from before I added anything to it, you'll see it's sort of just kind of hitting about, I think that's probably about -9 dB, which is decent. That's a decent area to be hitting for the moment. It gives me a lot of headroom to add more instruments, gain staging, etc. So that will hit pretty much exactly the same as the version with the effects on it. So there you have it. As I said at the beginning, this is just one way to mix your 808 kicks. There's a ton of ways to do it. It's totally down to taste. But I hope that this method has at least given you some inspiration to try out your own ways of mixing your 808 kicks. I've included a link below for the entire project, so you've got the drum sounds and the presets for the EQ on the 808 kick and the layered kick and just the bus compression as well. So feel free to download that, share it, experiment with it, play with it as much as you like. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more mixing, mastering and MPC tutorials and reviews. This is the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. Until next time.